Welcome to the Ultra Ascent Podcast. Your hosts, Alex Proctor and Mark Dowdle, are two aspiring professional runners with the goal to take you on a journey of making that dream a reality. You'll be given an inside look to what life is like as an unsponsored athlete and all the trials and tribulations that it entails. Along the way, they'll share how they train, what races and challenges are currently on their calendar, and how they aim to land support from brands. Alex intends to dominate in the professional trail running sector, taking souls and finishing on top the podium at the most premier trail races around the world, while Mark seeks to find new ways to discover the unknown and self-made, not yet accomplished ultra distance challenges. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Ultra Ascent Podcast. This is episode 7. Episode 7? Episode 7. We got a banger of an episode today. I want to start, Alex, right here in Romans chapter 5, because this verse is really speaking to me right now. It's something that has been just firing me up. It's Romans chapter 5, verse 2. Through him we have obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we rejoice in hope of the glory of God. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. That right there has been an anthem for me over the last couple weeks, and it came into fruition the other day, yesterday actually, when I found out someone close to me doesn't believe that I am going to essentially become the person that I state to the world that I am doing. They see what I'm doing now is not enough, and the failures are speaking louder to the world and to this person than the success and the evidence I have put forth. And so what I wanted to start today with was, no one's going to ever know who you are and what you're capable of. It's got to be you and the belief that you have in yourself. And when I found out that I found out this information, my first thought, my first reaction, something that I felt deep inside of me was, good. Let them. Because I know who the F I am. I work my ass off every single day, and I spend days. I talk about this all the time. I talk about building consistency, being diligent in your work, and allowing your evidence to be the thing that builds your confidence. And through the body of work that I put forth every day and the faith I have in God to guide me and listen to Him and the Holy Spirit, I'm filled with confidence that I don't even care what other people think. It awoken something in me that just said, here the fuck I am, and I'm gonna be even more on fire because I know that my faith is in what I do, and my faith is in what God has guided me and allowed me to put forth. So I just wanted to start with that. I wanted to open that up to you because I know after the conversations we have that going after audacious goals is not easy. There's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of fears. There's a lot of those three things when you put an audacious goal out there that the world's going to try and find a way to get you off your track. The world's going to try and find a way to somehow make you believe that you're not capable of accomplishing the things that you set out to do. And lately, I've been using scripture and I've been using the men's groups that I go to allow me to build that confidence, and couple that with an undeniable amount of work in the process that doesn't look at the results, but just looks at the body of work and say, I did enough today. And because of that, and because of the faith that I have in God, I am enough. And so I wanted to open the floor to you to see if you've dealt with that, how you're dealing with that, and what you're utilizing to get you through the unknown time.
Yeah, I definitely have dealt with that, and that resonates me. That fires me up quite a bit. I love when people put their doubt out there on me and almost portray what they're feeling inside onto me, and it makes me feel like I'm doing something right if they're thinking that I'm doing something wrong. I say that because, like you, I have that belief in myself, that confidence in myself, that I am going to pull it off. And, like you said, with the scripture and with these Bible studies that we've been going to, kind of in parallel. It's kind of like we've been doing this in parallel recently, which is kind of cool because we didn't plan that. We don't go to the same Bible studies. We don't read the same exact scriptures each week, but we're kind of going through the same things at the same time. And I don't think it's pure coincidence at all. We're being brought together by the Lord. And a verse that stuck out to me in my Bible study yesterday with my pastor and a friend of mine was in Mark chapter 10, and it was verse 27. Jesus is going about teaching his disciples some lessons, and at one point he looks at them and says, "With man this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God." So holding strong to that is something that I have bonded with and grown in relationship with recently. Being in a situation where we're in the unknown, we're slightly isolated, more so than ever. There's this lack of belief that I think stems from us putting out our goals publicly, and like you had said at one point, calling our shot, kind of like a Babe Ruth pointing to the crowd. We're putting that out there publicly, so we're opening ourselves up for criticisms, and we welcome that. We don't shy away from that. We know that it's inevitable that people won't believe, and we don't necessarily need them to, because we have that belief in ourselves, and we know that we're walking the path that God wants us to walk. We're doing the things that He wants us to do. We're loving our neighbors. We're growing a relationship with Him, and in that process, we're persevering and becoming better people. And I don't think I've necessarily been doubted publicly. I don't think people have gone outright and commented. I think I'm not at the point where I'm that much of a public figure at this point, so people aren't that bold. But I know that it's definitely out there. I'm someone that has just started running 2.5 years ago, so it wouldn't be wrong for someone to doubt me at this point. But knowing in my heart that I have that belief in me and that I have that confidence, it doesn't matter what they think at all to me. It's me versus me. And I love hearing when people either doubt someone I know or doubt you, because I know and I have that belief in you that you will be able to pull it off, because we go to any ends to do so. And in all honesty, I think it's probably some insecurity and some jealousy. I think that it makes people uncomfortable to see others shamelessly go after their goals without really thinking about the negatives and what could happen. Because in today's society, sometimes it's not cool to try. It's cool to be nonchalant about it. It's cool to play it like, oh, I don't really care that much about it. But we're putting it out there we care about this running so much. We care about what we're doing. We're caring about documenting this so much that we're going to put it out for everyone to see. And we're okay with the opinions, whether they're good or bad, because, we know who we are and we'll use them to better who we are, but it's not going to detract from what we're doing at all.
And I think the fear can come into play when you put that out there, because you're putting out a precedent that says, this is how I'm judging myself, or this is the line in which I'm either going to succeed or I'm going to fail. And there's a clear-cut line of you say you're going to do something. Now people can look at you not just when you succeed, but you're opening up people to look at you when you fail at something you say you're going to do. There's two questions I kind of want to open up more and have you expand on and have us talk about is, where do you find confidence? Because I know there's people listening to this that might say like, hey, I don't have a lot of confidence in myself. Where do I find that? That would be the first question. The second would be, you and I have talked about this of like feeling or just having faith in God and knowing that we're being taken on his journey, not our journey. And I want you to kind of talk about how do you know that this is God's plan for you? How do you know that and not, think that like I'm trying to make this work for selfish reasons, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. So for the first question, I guess where I pull confidence is in action, um, doing what you say you're gonna do, and not being afraid of the consequences, not being afraid of what might happen, um, staying true to yourself. I think a lot of my confidence comes from just wearing my heart on my sleeve and being who I am. I think that allows me to experience emotions that people almost restrain themselves from in a way when they're not truly being themselves. So that gives me confidence, and also gives me confidence when I'm in prayer. I think that's a big thing, and that's kind of leading into the next portion of it. Knowing exactly what path I'm going on, knowing that it's right. I think as humans, it's natural to have those doubts, to not know exactly where you're going, and that's when you lean on God. That's when you spend time in prayer and ask God, like, to show you that way, to ensure that you're on the right path, to put you in situations that'll help and that will help you grow in your faith. And I think that's all you can do. Have that faith, believe, and I guess I'd be curious to see like what your opinion is on like where your confidence comes from, and some of the things that you do to enable it in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what I believe aligns with what you just said is like, when I have the most fear or the most unknowns, which I feel like I'm in right now because the the uncertainty of my situation is vast. But when I feel that, I can take a step back and I can look at the body of work that I've done to set myself up for the results to come, and just be confident that the work I'm doing is enough. And and like, confidence for me isn't looking in the mirror and saying like, you are strong, you are enough, you are confident. It's not screaming these affirmations in the mirror. It's going to work and doing the things I don't want to do when I don't want to do them, and just going out and doing the work regardless. If I can do that, that's where the confidence comes. Even if I don't feel confident, I can be certain that I'm doing what is necessary to accomplish the goals that I've set out to do.
Dowdle's changed his location in the house, maybe closer to the router.
I'm sitting right next to it.
Let's go.
I'm sitting right next to it. So where I find that belief and like guidance from God is with the parable of the talents, and this is a summarized version of it, but essentially it's, these three people are given talents. Each one of them does something with the talent. One triples the worth of the talent, one doubles the worth of a talent, and the other one buries a talent because they're afraid of losing the investment. And when the person or
I don't know if it's God in the parable, but the person who administers the talents comes back and is pleased with the two people who chose to take that talent and put it out in the world and risk multiplying it, and was not pleased with the one that buried it. And I think trying to figure out what our talents are is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong process. But for what I'm aware of right now, like I have an extreme talent in running. I have an extreme talent in suffering, like high levels of pain and putting myself in situations that are extremely uncomfortable, and using that as a way to tell a story that you can find hope and change and growth in your personal development, your development with your relationships with people close to you. And I truly believe this. One of my friends reached out to me when I was on my run to Windsor, Ontario for the Beer Mile World Classic, when I was starting to be more open about faith and God. And he's someone that has had a strong faith for a long time. He just shot me a message and said that he believes that God gave me the gift of running so that I could find my way back to him. And I really, I believe that. Like, I believe that whether it is running or just the ability to endure and use athletic ability to push that forward, like I do feel like running was this gift that God gave me to find my way back to him, because I've spent my whole life surrounded by Catholicism, surrounded by Jesuit faith in high school, going to a Catholic university, and not once did I ever have interest in approaching God. And it wasn't until I started running and got through this process and learned that, like early on, I thought the answers to all of my problems, the answers to the doubt I had in humanity and myself and what I'm supposed to do with my life, I thought that I could answer that through running. And for a time it worked. For a time it became that answer. For a time it was a way for me to reflect and search and find some of these answers. But at the end of the day, at the end of 4 years of trying that and it working, it came to a point where I still felt lost. I still felt unworthy. I still felt lost and worthless to the world. And it led me to turn towards God. And I believe that in the same way that the talents, in the parable of the talents, it's like God gave me this talent, God gave me this gift, and I'm going to do whatever I can to multiply it and use that message to help other people in the situation that they're in.
Yeah. And dude, every word that you just said there resonates so hard with me. I've been feeling the same way for, since I started running my entire life. I hadn't really had any faith. I'd went to Lutheran Wednesday night, like Bible school, and it never really connected with me. I never really understood it. I never really thought it would be something that I wanted to commit my time to. So I kind of backed away from it for a while and never really thought much of it. Quit after the 7th, 8th grade. Didn't get confirmed like they do in the Lutheran church. And I'd almost at a certain point started to denounce people that had believed in God, and realized that my heart was continuing to harden, and I was not on a path to becoming the man that I could see myself being. There's always something missing, no matter what I did, no matter what I worked for, no matter how good of a person I thought I was, no matter how many good little things I thought I was doing, picking up the blueberries in the grocery store aisle for a lady that dropped them. I thought, like, maybe I'm righteous. I'm a great person. And that'll fulfill me. But doing the good works and being a good person doesn't do that. In my opinion, I think in forming this relationship with God and opening my heart to Jesus, I'm becoming the person I need to be and the person that I desire to be. And it's through his word that I'm beginning to even understand what that means. I don't think I really understood what that meant for a long time. Up until, recently, I've only been getting into the Bible. I don't know the verses off the top of my head. I honestly don't have that much knowledge on it. I'm just beginning. But things like servant leadership and leading humbly and doing the things that you say you're going to do, and backing them up with lessons and showing people that what it takes to persevere, and through what you're doing, reflecting God's image, I think are some of the most important things to me, because I found that the evidence leads me to believe that it's more probable that God exists and he's with us now, more so than he's not with us and that there is no God. Because I don't think something like this, something like us talking about this, almost it's so crazy how we're doing this outside the podcast. Like you guys don't see like what we're doing outside the podcast on, too much of a scale. I'd say like you don't see us going to the Bible studies, you don't see us interacting with God, but the fact that both you and I are kind of on this journey to building this relationship with God at the same time, sharing these moments together, I think is something special, and I don't think it's just a coincidence. We're here to do this for a reason, and I think it's to spread his good word. And at this point, if you guys are still tuning in and you guys are keeping an open mind, if you're unbelievers, that I would ask you to try opening your heart and see where it leads you, because for me, it took me a while. I was very stubborn. I put it off. I thought I have always done this on my own, so I'm going to continue doing this on my own. It was almost I think it was ego driven. I didn't want to bow down to worship to someone else. And now that I have, I'm realizing how much better I feel because of it, and how much more fulfilled I feel because of it, and the purpose I feel because of it. I think before I was operating in a shell, and now I feel like I'm becoming more whole the more I'm learning. And it takes time, I am still not comfortable with it. I still like don't understand everything. And that's the thing with running, with anything you do, with content. You don't necessarily need to understand it. You don't necessarily understand where to start. Just start doing. And in doing so, in putting that action forward, you'll begin to grow in that faith, and you'll begin to have that confidence in yourself, and you'll begin to do more things that make you uncomfortable and grow from there, because otherwise you're going nowhere, and you're going to leave this earth with nothing. And I mean, do you have anything to say about that? I was kind of going on a riff tangent, but
the only thing, I mean, what I'll add to that is whether you believe in God or a creator or Jesus, whether you believe in that or not, you're worshiping something. Something is your God. And for the longest time, attention and validation from the external world, success, accomplishments, followers, likes, who is like seeing my stuff, those were my God. Social media was my God. And I think you put it perfectly. It's like, we're just really starting this journey, and I'm not here to say that like I couldn't name a verse in the Bible, but I'm learning. And coming back from Chicago yesterday, I just sat and I read the Beatitudes, and the first one blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, blessed are the poor in spirit. I was like, what does that even mean? Well, that means that you and I, we have nothing of value to offer God. There's nothing that we could offer him that he doesn't already have. There's nothing that we could offer him that can make a dent into his being. Like, we need him. He doesn't need us. And I think that creates humility, and it also puts me in the same place that we started this podcast, is like, you don't need anything in this world other than God, and that will humble you, and it will take away the imposter syndrome that you have, not just with faith, but with other aspects of your life. With running, it's like, if I feel like an imposter in running, then I need to go back and do the work and put evidence forth so that I can eliminate that fear. And, it's funny because you and I both spent this Thanksgiving weekend doing something that we love to do, putting more evidence on paper to accomplish goals that we say we're going to accomplish. And I think it's beautiful to think that, years ago, I don't know what you were doing on Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving weekend, but it probably wasn't running rim to rim to rim with your wife.
No.
So talk to us about that. Tell us about your weekend.
Yeah, let's get into it. So we started out in Salt Lake City on, what was it, Wednesday, before Thanksgiving. Myself, Natalie, and our two friends, Dan and Sarah, got off work early. Obviously, I didn't get off work. I had been off work.
You stay off work.
I stay off work. I was ready to go at 7 a.m. But we left and we headed towards Glendale, Utah, which is about 2 hours north of the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Stayed there Wednesday night, got everything ready to go. Packed our packs, our Salomon, 12 liter packs. And the nerves and anxiety began to set in. I think we didn't entirely know what we were getting ourselves into. No one had really been to the Grand Canyon before. I had stepped out of the car at one point, like my freshman year of college, with my family, and my sister had basically said, I'm ready to go. So we had left after about 20 minutes of looking at it, and that was enough for me to want to come back. If you haven't been to the Grand Canyon before, it's truly one of the most visually shocking things that you've ever seen. No doubt. I don't think anyone in this world could deny that. It's one of God's most beautiful creations ever when it comes to aesthetics in the natural environment, in my opinion. And so we had gotten up when we went to sleep. We got up at 1:30 a.m. To start, so that we would end in the daylight. Drove down, started at about 2:15, 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours south to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. We started at the north rim because that is the rim that is closest to Salt Lake City. So about 4.5, 5 hour drive, 6-ish in traffic down to Glendale, and then an extra 2 hours the day of the Grand Canyon. So not that long of a trip, something you could definitely do in a day. We ended up starting at about 4:15. There was snow on the ground on the north rim as it's about 8,500 feet up, 18 degrees. We were all fully loaded, packed up, heavy bags, ready to start our descent. Started at about 4:15, ran down, and immediately we were hit with like a heat wave. We felt like we had already overdressed, had too many layers, so everyone started to strip things off about a mile in. Couldn't see anything as we continued to traverse down the switchbacks of the North Rim into the canyon. It's almost like a reverse mountain. So I guess I'd go over the quick stats of what we did before I get into it. So rim to rim to rim, depending on, the route variations, it could be anywhere from 43 to 50-ish miles. And then the vert usually tends to be around 12,000 feet. As you go down, cross the Grand Canyon, you get out of the Grand Canyon in about 5,000 feet of gain, go back down, cross it again, and do the same thing on the other side. So it's a long day. By the time the sun started to rise at about 7:20, we'd been running for about 3 hours at this point and traversed, I think, 14 miles. And most of it, if not all of it, was basically downhill. So we were kind of rolling the miles down, feeling good. Got to a spot called Phantom Ranch, which is right up against the Colorado River at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, and this is definitely a bucket list place to stay for anyone that wants to experience the Grand Canyon. I think it'd be a good place to bring your family. It's like they have total accommodations there. It's insane. They have showers. They have a whole restaurant. They have like these cabins made of brick. Like everything's well put down there. And it's like, how do they get this stuff down there? So we got to thinking about it, and then we eventually found out when we were heading, across the Colorado River on a bridge back up the South Rim. We got stopped by a mule train. So there's these trains of like 6 to 8 mules with these big packs on. There's like a horse rider at the front and then someone at the back that's leading these trains, and they bring all these supplies up and down the canyon for these people. Sometimes it's for people that can't carry their packs down. They're unable to handle that load, or it's for people that want to take the ride down the entire way. And in some cases they do trail repair as well. So
is the ranch the halfway point?
So I guess it depends on which way you start, because from the North Rim, it was 14 miles to it. From the South Rim, it would be about 8 miles. So not exactly the halfway point, but it's a good spot for you to reconvene and figure out, like, assess things. I'd say you can sit down at the picnic tables. If you're staying at the ranch, you can get, you have access to like the lemonade there, the food. But the first rim to rim from north to south, that first 21 miles ended up going really smoothly. It didn't take us too long. I think it was about 5.5 hours to the top in those 21 miles and about, let's say, 5,000 feet of gain. Got up there. It was freezing on the south rim. I used the balls method, which means I took my gloves off and literally put my hands on my balls to warm them up.
I like that method.
That was the only way I could figure out how to warm them up, because the water up there was freezing. It was literally icicles. Hordes of tourists on Thanksgiving. This was Thanksgiving, by the way. So everyone was saying happy Thanksgiving. Head back down. And at this point, we got back down to Phantom Ranch, and we were pooped. I think everyone had gotten to their point where they, this is the part you sign up for that's uncomfortable. This is the part where you start to suffer a bit. Even though you're in the most beautiful place basically of all time, there's still room for suffering there, which I think is really cool.
How does suffering in a place like that, how does that change the experience, or what does that do to your experience there?
I think for me, it gave me a closer bond to the place. It made me feel more connected with it. The fact that it humbled me in that way when I didn't really expect it to, led to me feeling like there was more value there and that it meant more. I think that you can look at it and say, like, this is a beautiful place. This is somewhere I could see myself doing something active. But when you get to the point where it hurts and where you're suffering and where you look up and you see how beautiful it is in that moment, that there's almost more beauty to it. You start to notice things that you wouldn't before, because you're forced to slow down and you're forced to soak it all in. And you want to get away from your suffering. So you want to look externally when, you know, you should be looking internally. It's easy in that place to kind of let it go external, which is, you know, now that I'm saying that, I'm not sure if that's a good thing, but it does make the experience more fun, in general. So then we eventually got past Phantom Ranch, 8 miles of rolling hills upward. And then there was a steep climb out, which drug on for forever. Got back to the car. Natalie snoozed the entire way back to our Airbnb, and we really had felt like we had accomplished something that was, I think, bucket list for not just ultra runners, but runners in general to complete in their lifetime. It's one of those hikes / runs that I think no matter if you're a runner, hiker, ultra runner, that you should try to do at some point in your life, because there's nothing quite like it. There's a lot of support along the way in terms of water supply. There's a good history of people that have implemented a water pipeline throughout the entire stretch. So there's a good amount of water sources. But the best time to do it is a short window, because the Grand Canyon gets hot as all get out. In the summer, it can get to like 110, 120 at the bottom. So if you're not careful, a lot of people have had to get like hell-evac'd out of there. So October, November, April, maybe early May are like some of the only times to logically pull it off. So we did it basically the last few days that you could. It closes up on the North Rim on December 1st, 2nd. You can start from the South Rim, which most people do since that's closest to Flagstaff. And there's all the hotels, all the accommodations on the South Rim. But from the North Rim, the last weekend to do it was this past weekend, since the road to get there closes. It gets quite snowy pretty soon here. If I were to do it again, I would probably start from the South Rim and go south, north, south. We did north, south, north. I say that because it would make the end a bit more enjoyable for a group. If I were to do it alone, I'm not sure exactly what I'd choose at this point. But since the stretch that's longest comes from Phantom Ranch to the North Rim, which is about 14-ish miles of uphill, like progressively and then steep, ending with that is pretty demoralizing for people that haven't either gone that distance before or weren't necessarily prepared for that level of suffering for that long. It leads you to be in the pain cave for a lot longer than I think going the other direction would, since Phantom Ranch is kind of a location where you can kind of chill, take a break. If you were to do it the other way around, you just have to go 8 miles up and out rather than 8 miles rolling and then 6 miles straight up.
So it was 43 and a half miles. It took you guys 12 and a half hours.
Correct.
A question I got asked this weekend was, how do you handle this on a weekend that is so centered around family obligations? You did this with your wife, Natalie. How would you answer that question? And what did it mean to you to be able to do this with Natalie?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for us was the price of the plane tickets to get back to Minnesota. I think for each of us, it would have been $350 to $400 round trip, which means that would be around somewhere between $700 to $800 between us. And knowing that we're going to be coming back for Christmas and we already invested in that for 10 days, it made it easier for us to, bless you, it made it easiest for us to figure something else to do with that time. Since Natalie is working full time, there's only, a few holidays per year that you can take advantage of the 4 or 5 day weekend.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make the most of that and experience something that we hadn't experienced before. To do it with Natalie, I think, is the most important thing to me. Experiencing something like that with her and having, a witness to your life is something that I think love and a relationship and marriage is kind of all about. Getting to experience Earth, to experience the emotions, to push through hard things together, to see each other at your best, at your worst, to create that bond that's everlasting. I think those are some of the things that make it important to me to do some of these things with Natalie. And I was given the opportunity to do this a few weeks ago without her. There's a whole bunch of people in Utah that do this like every single weekend. It's like they make the pilgrimage down there because it's so cool. It's something that, it's truly unforgettable. And I just chose not to because it wasn't something that I wanted to see without Natalie. I wanted to be there. I wanted to experience it with her. I wanted to see the look on her face when the sun first came up over the canyon, and you could start seeing it hit the high walls in the south rim, and just that awe in her eyes and how it made her feel really added to the experience. And if I were to do it again, it'd be hard not to do it with her, but I'd feel better now knowing that we've done it together and that she's experienced it. And we were able to push through. There were some hard moments there on the north side coming back. She had previously only gone 26.2 miles at Grandma's Marathon this June. Since then, she's kind of been doing maintenance miles of about 30 miles per week. So doing this 44 miles in one stretch was a big ask, but it was something that she would never turn down because she wants to experience these things. She wants to do it. She's a yes person when it comes to adventure. So at the point when we got past, the 28, 29, 30 range, it started to get really uncomfortable for her, and I could tell that. And the reason I can tell is when she gets into those dark spots, she starts not to talk as much anymore. It's pretty funny. Like I ask her, like, "Hey, how you doing? Like, are you doing okay?" And then she just doesn't answer. I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah,
that's telling
your
to me.
answer.
That's enough to know." We began slowing down quite a bit, and it was my first time really getting to see her struggle and suffer in that endurance realm before. I'd never seen that before in training, really. I mean, a few times, but never really long lasting, between intervals of some speed workout, but nothing where there was no other option for her but to push through and get to the top of that north rim by any means necessary. There's no other way out. There's no going back because you're going back to the south rim and having the 5-hour drive from a shuttle that you're paying for. So you have no choice. Yeah. You're stuck there, and seeing her like push through that was very rewarding and special to see. There was a moment at one point that if she's listening to these podcasts, like, which I know she does, she won't necessarily want me to talk about, but it was hilarious because we were between Phantom Ranch and this campground. And during that stretch, there's not many areas to go to the bathroom. And we found ourselves in quite a predicament when we were like super close to the campground, but not close enough where it would work out. And it's just this funny picture where like we're super close to the trail, like she's gotta go. I'm scrambling to like find rocks for her. Like there's no leaves, nothing to use. And in that moment, it was just like, man, like this is really beautiful in a way. Like this is what I came here for. Like these type of moments, these funny, spontaneous, raw moments where it's like, find me a better rock. Like this one's not flat enough. Like this isn't working. Like, yeah. Those are the type of things that pop up and you're not prepared for, but it's like, it makes it all the more memorable and worthwhile, doing. So yeah, it's truly special to experience those things with her. And, it's something that we've kind of ingrained in our relationship as it's developed, going on some of these trips and seeing some of these things together and really getting to see what it's like to struggle together and how we react to that, because it translates to life daily. The little things,
Yeah.
the who's going to do the dishes, who's going to clean this. Like, we've already struggled enough that like it's a lot easier for us to go through those things because we know that we've gone through it much harder than these simple little arguments.
Well, and it sounds like, I mean, when people ask a question like that, where they say like, how do you handle doing stuff like this with family obligations? What it sounds like is your family obligations, in quotes, is the desire to create experiences with your wife that are going to transform your relationship in the everyday life. And that is the priority. That is the obligation. That is the thing that you guys are driving towards. And so, yes, doing the rim to rim to rim isn't a traditional way to spend a Thanksgiving, but in many ways, from what it sounds like, it was more of a personal experience that you guys will remember more than probably any other Thanksgiving that you've had, because it wasn't this mundane thing of like an obligation of where you had to go do. It was something that you guys decided on together, you went after, and then you suffered through it, and
Yeah.
you stuck to it, even when it was finding a place to relieve yourself in a random spot in the Grand Canyon, or going through those moments where you're in so much pain you can't even express it verbally. Like, those are I don't know what another word for like what a positive, because obligation sounds like it's something you have to do, but this is something that you guys drove towards. This is something you guys created and experienced, and I think that's so important, so important. It's like, what are your priorities, and how do you agree on those priorities together? I think that's everything.
Yeah, and one more thing before we get into how your weekend went, because I feel like the trips that we go on, both of us, are like super spontaneous and don't have much planning behind them.
Oh no.
But they just come to fruition, and we're like, oh, we're gonna show up and you're gonna do it. But I guess the last thing is like, yeah, I don't want people to think, which I don't really care if what you think about it, but I want people to realize that like choosing to do this, we're not necessarily meaning to neglect our other family members or those relationships at all. We're choosing to do this because we know that there's value in strengthening the bond between you and your partner, you and your wife, you and your spouse, and how that can strengthen your relationship elsewhere as well. Because if that family unit that you have that's closest to you isn't strong, and if it isn't prepared to go through hard things or have hard conversations with other people, then it's going to dissipate and fall through the cracks easily. If you're not nurturing it, if you're not ensuring that you're doing these hard things together, you won't be even prepared for the easy things together at all. So,
Well said.
I will say, like, although we didn't go about spending the $800 to go home, like, this trip for us ended up being about, what was it? In total, if we counted the gels eaten, the food eaten, the gas, the Airbnb, I would say it was half that, 400 between us both. Which I think for an experience like that, for 3 days at an Airbnb, going across the Grand Canyon, rim to rim to rim, was something that I would do all over again if we had the chance. But money is a bit tighter right now. So we'd like to say that we have a good idea of what our budget is on some of these things, but when it comes down to it, like, we're going to do what feels right to us and what's rational to us, and experiencing God's creation like this is something that we'll never forget now. So I guess with that being said, how was your how's your weekend experience? How was your turkey trot, so to speak? And
Yeah.
I guess, how did it come about? First of all, how did you hear about this event? What was it? And what are some of the funny stories or some of the more memorable stories that you could tell us about, and some of the lessons that you kind of took from it along
Yeah.
the way?
Yeah, so the event itself it's called the World's Longest Turkey Trot, and it's been going on for the last 11 years. The founder, Scott, and his buddy, Alfredo, started it as just like crazy idea that they wanted to do. And it was running from the Bean in Chicago to Milwaukee. And they did it. It became this annual thing, and Alfredo, one of the founders, a few years after, I'm not sure the timeline because I'm still learning about this group of people and the founding of it, but he passed away from ALS, and so it became this annual fundraiser and awareness for ALS. And so they've been doing it ever since. They go back and forth between Milwaukee and Chicago every year, switching off the route. I found out about it a few weeks prior at Embrace North, which is the local sauna cold tub facility here in Minneapolis. Sauna. And Michael Finstad, Michael Finney, they call him Finney. He is rooted deep with the 10 Junk Miles crew. That's the founder of this run. Scott also is the host of the 10 Junk Miles podcast and a number of races and ultras in the Midwest under the 10 Junk Miles name. And so my guy Finney from Embrace North told me, hey, you're going home from Chicago in a few weeks. You should check out this run. And so I had no prior expectations going into it. All the information that I really had going into it was that they're starting at 8 a.m. and it's at the Bean. That's all I knew. I knew nothing about it. So showing up was met by a group of 15 strangers. And over the course of over the course of 27 plus hours, those strangers became friends, and they became close comrades of us just struggling to get to Milwaukee. Some of the more memorable moments, something that I was really impressed with, and something we've talked about in previous episodes, is this idea of like no man left behind or no person left behind. The goal every year is that the slowest person sets the pace. And, for anybody listening, that is very unlikely to ever happen, even in 5Ks, even in like a 5-mile run. And what impressed me most was how this group was dedicated to the fact that we're all sticking together to the very end. So it became very clear early on that it was going to take more than just 24 hours to get to the end destination because we were doing a whole bunch of walking. We developed this strategy early on within the first 15 miles that we carried with us the whole way, which was walk for 7 minutes, run for 1 minute. And that's the pace we went for the entire way. And for someone like me who runs slow already, I was kind of used to being able to slow things down, but this took it to a whole new level. Some highlight people that stand out for me is one, this older woman. I really hope I'm doing her justice by saying she's above the age of 60. But she's up there in age. Her name is Bonnie. And she impressed me because not only was she there for all 27 hours, I learned throughout the weekend that she's done Arrowhead 6 times. She's completed it 3 times. She's completed the Badwater 135. So like 2 of the most extreme races in the world on the hot end and the extreme cold end. There's another guy, Barry, there who also did Arrowhead 135. He's done
Dude,
Western States and Leadville. And then there was a whole hodgepodge of other people that were just like, it really felt like this group of misfit toys, and I'm putting myself into that mix. That's like a compliment,
Yeah.
because it's just a group of people. It's like, who the hell does this on Thanksgiving weekend? Like, why would you choose to do this? And all the people there are silly enough to say, yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm gonna go do that. That's how I'm gonna spend my weekend, my Thanksgiving weekend. So I was really impressed by the group staying together. I was really impressed by Bonnie and her experience and knowledge that she shared with me all throughout the weekend about Arrowhead. I learned a lot. Um, it just incredible insights that I'll take with me going into Arrowhead. And then something that stood out to me is, a lot of these people there have competed at the Badger 100, which is a 10 junk mile race. And there was a gentleman there, I'll keep him unnamed, but he was just telling me about how, I asked him like how he got into hundreds, what it was like for him, because he's gone to Badger 100. I don't believe he's ever completed it, but he's attempted and failed it 3 times. And I just asked him like, what does it, why? Like, I'm curious to know why people continue to show up at something that they have proven to fail at time and time again. Like, what drives you to go back? And he just expressed how he loves the part of figuring out the puzzle, figuring out the pieces that are going to bring him to a successful outcome, no matter how many times he fails. I mean, this guy has experienced so much adversity in his life. His daughter has MS, and she has been struggling with that in a wheelchair for essentially her whole life. His wife is in hospice. He grew up and his parents owned a bakery, so he was around sweets and sugar and just like all of this his whole life, and he found himself overweight, bullied in school for it, and he got into running as a way to have a better grasp on and control over his life. And he just, shared some more stories about his parents and aunts and uncles and the things that they've gone through, the health complications that they have. And to see this guy who has so much adversity in his life, so much like things he can look at, like, wow, I'm doomed. Look at all these people in my life that are experiencing these health complications. Like, what, I'm just going to be another person that falls in suit and falls in line with this narrative. And he took it upon himself to change that. On top of all of the other aspects of his responsibilities, taking care of his kid, taking care of his wife, and still finding time to take care of himself and his well-being, and putting forth like this incredible effort this weekend. So, all those aspects, there's a ton of stories that we, just like the little stuff that you go through along the way, like, just like the 8 different McDonald's that I felt like we found ourselves in.
I was going to
throughout the
ask
way.
you guys.
Just like, just finding that this was like 2:30 in the morning. No, sorry, this was 4:30 in the morning, and it was cold, and we had just done 2 back-to-back 4 to 5 mile stretches, and everything's closed at this point. Everything is closed, and this 4:30 stretch was just silent. Everybody was in this sufferfest. It was cold. We were talking about this after the fact because nobody could articulate and verbalize how they were feeling, but people were like, I just felt drunk off of being tired and cold. And we get to a gas station where our crew chief is parked, and it is 4:50, and the gas station's closed, and everyone's like trying to pile in the car, and people are going up to the gas station door to see if it's unlocked, and the lady who's opening it at 5:30 is there, and she lets us in and lets us buy food and just stay warm and use the
Nice.
bathroom. And like, like the whole energy, the whole environment changed because we were able to just get like $3 ramen and have it in the microwave. Like it was insane. Um, so yeah, I feel like there was something else, but oh yeah, and we raised money for Band of Runners, which is a organization that helps veterans get into the trail running community by offering free trail camps, free training camps where professional trail runners will come in and teach these veterans about running, teach them about trails, teach them about the benefits of running and how to like incorporate that into your daily life. And the goal was to raise $10,000, which we surpassed by like $1,000 or $2,000. That was super cool. Overall, like I just think going into this weekend, I talked about this yesterday on a post. I really believe that like going into this event, I was a little unsure. I was honestly unsure up until the morning that I woke up to go to it that I was even going to show up at all. Because, you know, like I'm the type of person who I love running with people, but there's a cap on how much I can take of like people that I don't know or even people that I do know. And I was like, man, I'm about to spend probably 24 hours with a group of people that I don't know. What if I just don't like them? What if it's just like weird? What if I want to bail? I'm like committed to doing this thing. And I just sort of allowed the experience to be what it was meant to be and didn't have prior expectations of what it should be. And that allowed for me to be open to learning about everybody there, learning about why we were there and why people showed up to be there. And it was just a reminder to me that some of the best experiences I've had in life, like this weekend, come from times where I just show up. I just show up and I have faith that like it's no matter what, it's going to be a learning experience. No matter what, it's going to be a story to tell. And I think if you can just leave it at that, then you get to experience something special that you otherwise wouldn't experience. Like,
Yeah.
So I walk away from that experience being like, well, will this be my last time doing it? If you asked me during the event, I would have said no, because it was a sufferfest. But now that I'm 2 days removed, I'll probably be going back next year. I'll probably be back
no.
next year.
So it ended up being about 85 miles. You guys were moving for about 24 hours. The elapsed time was 28 hours.
Yeah.
I guess you had said that the hardest portion was probably around the 4:30 a.m. mark, 4:50. Yeah. I feel like that was the stretch of time when we were doing our backyard ultra that was just zombie mode, where I was slapping myself in the face to stay awake. I was almost falling into the snowdrift on the side of the path. And like in those moments, it's like you can go to some dark places, definitely. But I think my favorite memories from that time period where I was that wonky and that like drunk feeling was like the hallucinations. Did anyone experience any of that, or was it to a point where there were so many people that it wasn't really possible? I guess when we were doing it, there was so few people at that point that the creatures just started to come alive outside of us.
No one talked about hallucinations. I wouldn't say that I experienced hallucinations, but during that stretch, I definitely experienced fear in like sleep deprivation. It's not like hallucination, but like we had a guy who was in charge of letting people know when it was time to run and when it was time to walk. And when he would say, "All right, we're running," like going from silence to that like first vocal cord being echoed out, and like my body would it would like jump, like it was fear, it was like startling me. And there are other times where the tree branches over the street, reflecting off of the light, like moving back and forth. I just remember like being so afraid at like this object moving in my peripheral. So not like extreme hallucination, but I was definitely sleep deprived, and it was affecting me.
Yeah. And do you think that this pace that you were moving at, and the way you were going about this effort, do you think it will translate well to your effort coming up at the Arrowhead 135 in a way?
In a way, yes. I will be moving at a quicker clip. My goal at Arrowhead is to run 4 miles an hour every hour on the hour, just like a last person standing event.
Okay.
With a few, aid station stops in between, that might be like a 10 to 15-minute break. But it definitely prepared me to be out in the cold for long periods of time, because I think at this pace we were going slower than I would have gone, but it forced me to get comfortable with cold temperatures in a way that I wouldn't otherwise have gotten. So it
I
definitely
feel like at
prepared
that
me.
pace, you couldn't really get warm
No.
ever.
No.
That minute of running, I don't think is enough really to kind of stoke that fire in you and to keep you warm. So I think that'll translate really well to you having to do that during the Arrowhead. And I know that you'll be moving faster, so you'll be warmer, but it also there's chances that it'll be much colder out
Yeah.
there.
Well, and the thing is, like, I never felt like I never overheated, but I was never cold. And so it did show me that even at that pace, I can regulate my temperature.
That's good.
And that's the whole game for Arrowhead, is regulating temperature. Now it's going to be, I mean, it got down to 15 degrees at its coldest point, and it's going to be another, 30-degree swing colder during Arrowhead. So it's going to be significantly colder, but I learned that, like, even at that walking pace, I can regulate my temperature.
Nice. Nice. On that Arrowhead tune, and last thing I wanted to ask about that before we kind of wrap up here. A few random things we got to talk about at the end here. But as we get closer to Arrowhead and you start to work out, goals and how you're going to race, since you've been in a position to win a race before, you've won the Wausau Backyard Ultra. This is a different race where it's distance to distance. It's not timed. How much are you going to be playing off your competition? Are you going to run your own race? How do you know how fast you should run? I know you had said that you were going to do the 12 mile or the 12,
4 mile
15,
an hour.
15-ish minutes per mile, 12 to 15 minutes per mile. How did you go about determining that? And how do you know that that's a pace that will win this race? Because I know one of your goals is to win.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I did research in what previous years' winners have won in, and I have to go back and look, but I think last year's winner won it in 36 hours.
Wow.
135 miles in 36 hours. Now, my quick back of the napkin math tells me that if I run 4 miles an hour, like I did at Arrowhead, 34 hours got me to 142 and a half miles. So I ran more miles in 2 hours less of time at Wausau than the winner of last year ran to win Arrowhead. So I basically just worked my way backwards from that and said, okay, if I can stick to that pace and, use the mentality that I used during Wausau to win, which was just don't quit. Just keep going. Just don't quit. Trust the process and let everything play out. Then, I have confidence that what I do on that day will lead to success and will lead to a victory. I try not to, I'm sure there will be moments where I will be thinking about the other racers and thinking about the competition, but unlike Wausau, where I can visually see my competition every single loop, Arrowhead's a unique race where chances are, there are chances, which after speaking to Bonnie and Barry and another friend who I hopped on a call with to talk about Arrowhead who ran it last year, chances are I won't see anybody after the 7-mile mark for the rest of the race. So it's like, and it's going to be in darkness because it's winter, it's up north, sun sets at freaking 3:00. So I'm going to be in darkness. And at that point, I've kind of thought a lot about this, and I thought about it a little bit out there, where I'm trying to get into the scripture of Jesus being crucified and thinking about how he had to carry the cross and what he endured just so we could be here on this earth to be saved from our sins. And I'm really trying to visualize that, because once I'm out there, my pain will feel tremendous. I will feel alone. I will feel isolated, but it won't be anything compared to what he went through. And he went through that just so I could be in that position. And so that, like, I'm trying to make that connection, because when I'm out there and I feel isolated, I won't have anybody but myself and the Lord to rely on. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm trying to hold true. I'm not really trying to think about the other racers out there, because I won't even be able to see them. So
yeah, I guess at a certain point, if you do find yourself at the same pace as someone else, I think it could be advantageous to you both to work together, and I think that'd be a fun experience. But if it takes away from your race, it's not something you want to do for long. It's a hard balance. It's something that I experienced during Grindstone. It's like how long to run alongside someone, and to figure out if that's like the right pace for you. But you'll eventually figure out, like, if you're feeling good, if you're not, like, if you can keep up. But the shared effort does help to bring down the perceived level of exertion. So it'd be cool if you found someone that was going your pace. And I know that is the previous winner coming back and trying to defend his title.
He is, but Alan Chapman is the previous winner. He's a friend. He's a friend of the podcast. He's a friend of the show.
Friend of the podcast.
He won last year. He also set the FKT of the Superior Hiking Trail.
Whoa.
And he's going back in the unsupported division this year at Arrowhead. So there's the bike, there's the ski, there's the run support, which means you can utilize the 3 aid stations, and then there's the unsupported run where you don't get to use anything except for what you bring with you out on your sled. So I don't know if the winners are categorized or separated by those 4 categories, or if the winner of the run is determined by both of those run categories. I'm not entirely sure, but he's coming back, but he's making it more difficult on himself. So
nice. And you're not ready to do that?
No, I got to experience it first.
Yeah, that's good. I feel like going into it, it's natural for people like us to think that this is some easy thing that we could pull off, and then you get into the arena and it's like, this is a whole different beast.
Yeah. I have a healthy amount of fear going into this race. I have a healthy amount of fear. So I'm going to use that to prepare.
Yeah. And something that you provoked in me to think more about was another thing from the scripture. This has been a common theme of the episode, I guess. But something that our pastor had spoken about, I think, before Thanksgiving, and it is in the 100th Psalm, and in the 5th verse, it says, "For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." So I think in those moments, for you to be like the Lord and his love and trying your best to endure forever, I think is something that could help you push through. And I guess with that and that connection to Scripture, I've been seeing these Instagram reels of, if anyone knows, this is gonna be the historic poll if you know who I'm talking about. But there's this guy on Instagram that shows these basketball highlights, like NBA highlights and clips, and maybe even college too. But he doesn't just show the highlight and react to it. He reacts to it in a way where he's throwing in a Bible verse that relates to the action and the thought process of the individual performing the highlight, which is really cool. And I think that's something that we have been stewing on, implementing into our content. I know that you have been doing quite a bit lately and have gotten mixed reactions from, but I think it's really cool and something that we can do and utilize to continue spreading God's word. And we understand that this is divisive in some ways to some people, that they might not totally resonate with it or totally understand it. But I guess what we're asking is just for an open heart and an open mind. And we're not telling you that you need to believe, that you need to do this, but we're just throwing some of the things that we're learning in, and some of our opinions on it, and showcasing how it's playing a part in our journey and how that's making us who we are, and how we're growing in our faith and walking that spiritual path, because it's not something that we've really experienced before. So this is kind of like we're kind of on the ground zero of a lot of different things right now. First time truly this year being unemployed. First time this year, I guess calendar year-ish, last September was when I kind of picked up my faith, was, still learning that. And then navigating this goal of becoming a professional ultra runner while, starting a family, marrying my wife, living in a new city that I had not lived in before August. Like, there's a bunch of new things that I'm throwing at myself and implementing in my life, and seeing what I become from it and how I'm able to serve other people from what I do, and from what I'm learning. So I guess, do you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, from things that you're learning, we're both learning a lot right now, and we're implementing that into our future. I think there's a lot to learn in our faith, in running, and some potential races that could be coming up on the lottery coming up in the next couple weeks and month. So other than it being faith season, it's lottery season.
Dude, you're the best segwayer in history. Unreal wraparound segue. Yeah, I guess let's just wrap this one up. I know it's been about an hour 20-ish now with our technical difficulties combined. Yeah. So I guess the last thing on the docket for, I think this week, end of this week or start of next week, people will begin to know whether or not they got into the Hard Rock 100 in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, and or the Western States 100 that ends in Auburn, California, begins in Olympic Village. Those are two of the biggest races in ultra running history. Those races are two of the most desired to be in, so the lotteries are pretty huge at this point, and the odds are getting less and less likely that you'll get in. So this is my first year entering the lottery. I'll have one ticket in each. So I think for both it's around 3 or less % that I'll get in, which is okay. I don't necessarily want to get into either of these races this year, but I kind of have to start putting my name in the hat early, because there's some people that have been waiting for 8 years to be called in the lottery. But luckily enough, the race I'm doing in February, the top 3 males and females get a golden ticket to Western States. So if I'm able to pull that off and go top and go top 3 there, it's an automatic entry. It's an automatic entry to Western States. I'm not necessarily going to call my shot in that at this point, but it would be really cool to be at Western States one day or Hard Rock. So I'm kind of holding off on some race plans until I hear back on those. There's a live stream for both drawings. There's in-person parties where people kind of show up if they're local, and they come up on stage like it's like an Oprah show. If they get their name pulled,
you get a ticket. You get a ticket.
And they celebrate. So it's gonna be a cool week, and gonna be a week where people are gonna begin to realize some of their dreams coming true, because these are some of the races that are on people's life bucket lists to run. They're in some of the most like beautiful landscapes in not only the U.S. but the world, and they usually have, I guess in Western States' case, like one of the most competitive fields where all your favorite fast trail runners are each June. So really excited for that. Hoping I get in to one of them at some point this year. If I do get in, it'll be kind of unfortunate given my schedule with UTMB on the horizon in August and how much that's going to cost me to commit in terms of not only my time but financial means as well. But I'll be grateful either way and make sure to make the most of that opportunity if I do get pulled. The last thing you had on here, on the pulled note, tire pull. What was that about? Was that something that you were just...
That was just a note for reminder for myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to start pulling a tire for preparation for Arrowhead. One, because it's good prep for getting in the mode, but I also think it'd be awesome content.
That is awesome.
Of me just like running through the streets of Minnesota with a tire being strapped to my chest.
All right, I swear this is the last thing now.
Yeah. All right.
That sparked a core memory. I'm not sure if I had totally known you at this point, but I knew of you and I knew you were crazy. And I was walking on the sidewalk beside Summit with some friends. What were we doing? We were going to like a restaurant or something, or just going for a walk. And you were running down the middle of Summit on the dirt path, and you were carrying the biggest log I've ever seen in my entire life. And I think at one point it was like, I don't know what stage this was for you, but I think it was pretty early on in your running journey, and you were just carrying this log like Goggins, which is hilarious. I was like, is that Mark Dowdle doing that right now? Like I was shocked. Like I almost laughed because like it was the most like shocking like thing. This guy, tarps off, long hair, log in arms, running down the middle. It's like, what is going on here? But that was years ago. That had to be at least 4 or 5 years ago, which is hilarious.
I have a video of that. I have.
Do you?
Video. Yeah.
You'll have to send
funny.
me that.
That's funny that
funny.
you saw that.
That's awesome.
All right, episode 7.
Episode 7. What a way to go about it. I don't think we had really discussed, much of what we were going into this episode, kind of like all episodes in a way. But I'm happy with where it went, and hopefully it touches someone, a listener that might need to hear some of those things that we talked about, because there's a lot of content out there that I've seen that has helped me to open my heart to different things. Was it Cliff and Stuart Knechtley? Yeah, I think those two are super good and make it easy to digest the Lord's word. So awesome, dude.
Peace.
Peace.
Sweet.